Exposure compensation is one of the most powerful exposure controls on your camera. As such, it may very well become one of the most often used controls on your camera. With it, you can easily handle backlighting situations, you can control tonality, you can calm down overexposed highlights. To sum up, exposure compensation lets you adjust the camera's exposure up or down in fractional or whole stop increments. The Rebel's exposure compensation control is very easy to use. This is the exposure compensation readout right here. You can see I've got +3 stops over here, -3 stops over here. I'm currently at 0, meaning I have no exposure compensation. So if the camera meters, say in this instance, at 1/100th of a second at f5.6, that's what I'm going to shoot with. But let's say I decide that I want to underexpose this shot. This is my exposure compensation button right here. If I push that, then this control lights up. Now I can use this dial up here. If I turn it to the left, my little marker there goes down. That's 1 stop of negative exposure compensation. And this is 1 stop of overexposure compensation. These are 1/3 stop increments here. So I'm going to dial in 1 stop under and let go of the button. And now that just stays there. That exposure compensation is locked in now. It's going to stay at 1 stop under until I change this. Now when I meter, I get a different exposure. I can also meter first and then change my exposure compensation. And when I do that, I actually see my exposure parameters change, so I can see exactly what the exposure compensation is going to do. The Rebel's exposure compensation is very smart. It's not going to just willy-nilly change parameters. It's going to try and change them intelligently. It's going to try to not let shutter speed go below something that would be too shaky for handheld use. If you're in auto ISO mode, then it's going to automatically adjust ISO to buy you more latitude so that you don't have to get shutter speeds down too low. So it's a very smart mechanism, one that's going to try to keep you from getting into a handheld shaking problem. If you want to control a specific parameter, then you'll put the camera into a priority mode, either shutter or aperture priority, and we'll talk about that when we get to those chapters.